Yes, please.
What's the problem? What's the problem? What's the problem?
Someone killed my parents.
Pardon me?
Someone...
What? Who? Are they still there?
Yes.
The people...
No.
Were they shot?
Hey, man,
Were they shot?
Yes.
They were shot?
Yes.
What happened?
On August 20th, 1989, 21-year-old Joseph Lyle Menendez and his younger brother, 18-year-old Eric Menendez, shot and killed both their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez. The Menendez murders were brutal. 45-year-old Jose and 47-year-old Kitty were not so much killed as rendered nearly unidentifiable by 15 rounds from two 12-gauge shotguns. This murder and case would become infamous in true crime American history, but does their punishment of life in prison fit the crime? Welcome back to my channel, you guys. As you can see, today I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be doing my very first true crime commentary video. So let me know in the comments down below once the video was done, how you think I did, and if you would like to see me do more videos like this. The Menendez brothers. Now, fun fact about me, I absolutely am obsessed with true crime. I watch true crime documentaries. I will literally sit and watch a 3-hour interrogation unedited on YouTube. Like, I am that person. I just love to try and understand the human mind and why people do what they do, why they don't do what they were supposed to do. And I like to try to understand the nuance of every situation because nothing is really black and white. The Menendez brothers in this case is one that has always intrigued me. Now, originally, when I first became acclimated with this story, it was many, many years ago. I was much younger. Of course, I bought what everyone was sort of buying at that time, which was two rich, wealthy white boys who killed their parents for their inheritance money, who lied about why they did what they did. They were just spoiled and just cold-blooded monsters. That kind of was just where it started and where it ended for many people in the mainstream, unfortunately. And that's because there were so many people in the media that were pushing that narrative. There's been so many movies that have been made time after time about this story. And in my opinion, they get it wrong every single time.
Please send an ambulance.
What's the problem, please?
They shot and killed my parents.
Oh my God,
Sir?
I can't believe
Can you repeat that, please?
Oh
Hello? Are you still there? Are you okay? Hello? Hello?
Now, of course, when I was much younger, I didn't really critically think. I didn't really do the research. I was kind of just buying what I was being told. And so I just bought the original narrative, which was that these two boys were cold-blooded murderers. It wasn't until a couple of years later that I started actually doing some research, thinking for myself, and coming across some pretty amazing videos that really opened my eyes on the actual story that happened. The story that they didn't tell you. That thankfully, so many more people are now starting to understand and are now starting to be awakened by, which is that these two brothers were the victims. I said it. They were the victims. And in my opinion, they have no business serving life in prison. Life in prison with no chance of parole. In this video, I'm going to give you guys my perspective on why I feel that the courts got it so wrong. And hopefully, by some miracle, things can possibly turn around. And there is a glimmer of hope. And I'm going to be sharing that in this video. So let's get into this. Jose Menendez. Jose, in my opinion, was an actual living monster. Now, Jose had a lot of access because he worked at RCA Records as a top exec. So he had access to musicians and he was pretty much a part of the whole Hollywood lifestyle and the whole Hollywood life. And many people knew who he was within the industry and gave him a lot of respect, a lot of accolades, because they saw him as somebody who had access to take them to the next level. So he was somebody who was able to leverage his power to victimize many people. And unfortunately, his main victims were his own sons, his own children. Jose was a pedophile and one of the grossest human beings that I have ever researched and come across. He's horrible. And he abused his sons for years, especially Eric. See, Lyle was abused as well till about the age of 8. And then for whatever reason, it just stopped. And all of Jose's attention was on Eric. Eric was abused up until the night that he actually shot and killed his father at the age of 18. In fact, that same night, his father told him,
after I told Lyle that it had been continuing on, I said to myself, I'm never going to let him touch me again. And just before the shootings, my dad told me to get to my room and that he would be there in a minute, and he was going to come up, and there was going to be sex, and it was like an explosion in my mind.
I think the most unfortunate thing as well is the fact that their own mother, Kitty, knew exactly what was happening and looked the other way.
Did you tell your mom?
Yes.
What did you say to your mom?
I told her to tell Dad to leave me alone. And he keeps touching me.
What did your mom say?
She told me to stop it. And that I was exaggerating. And that my dad has to punish me when I do things wrong.
See, Kitty was a woman who had a lot of regrets in life because in her mind, she was supposed to be a star. She was supposed to be an actress. She was supposed to go places and do things. She wanted to live life and she wanted to do it unapologetically so. But she got pregnant with Lyle in 1968. And when she got pregnant, Jose asked her to be a stay-at-home mom, stay at home and raise their children. And so she did. But while doing that, she gained a whole lot of resentment against Lyle, because Lyle was the firstborn. And in her mind, Lyle was the person who stopped her dreams from coming true.
She would say that I ruined her life. She would just explain all the things that she could have been, an actress, broadcasting. I learned about that. Wait till your dad gets home, I'll tell him the things that you didn't do today, and I wish you were never born, and why can't you be like your brother, and what's the matter with you, and then I would try to say something. She would say, shut up, I don't want to hear it, you're stupid, I hate you.
How old were you when you heard things like, I wish you were never born?
So, 7.
Could you imagine being an 8-year-old or 9-year-old child living in that house and being touched and abused by your father? And when you run to your mother, the woman that's supposed to be the nurturer, the carer of your life, and she looks at you and says, you're exaggerating? And by the way, you're also a mistake. I cannot wrap my mind around the pain that these boys must have went through having those two people as their parents. It's horrendous. What really frustrated me too when I was doing my research is just how harsh the media was against these boys. I mean, here you have 2 young men who were sexually abused by their father, who were emotionally and physically abused by their father and their mother. They commit a heinous act in desperation to get away from these people, and the media, they have no sympathy or empathy for these boys because they're male. And on top of that, you have entities like SNL doing spoofs on their abuse, and everyone's just laughing. And that's a clear double standard, by the way, because we know that if these boys were girls, the media would probably have a different perspective. But because they were boys, male, there was this idea that men can't be molested, men can't be victims of sexual abuse or sexual assault. And if it did happen, they must have liked it. Which is why, for some crazy reason, the prosecution decided to ask about Eric's sexuality. And they tried to inquire on is it possible that maybe Eric is just gay? Maybe he's just a homosexual. And he probably enjoyed what was happening with his father.
We've heard hours of graphic testimony from Eric Menendez. And there's a common sense explanation for it. Eric Menendez is a homosexual.
I mean, Barbara Walters, who some say is a legend in broadcasting, I have some quarrels with that. She interviewed them shortly after they were convicted. And you know what? Just watch this clip and you tell me what you think.
You know, otherwise you can become very hard and cold in here.
Is this someone you knew before prison?
No.
This is someone who began to write to you and meet you?
She wrote me many years ago, but and I've come to know her well. But just someone that I met through the mail.
And she wants to marry you?
And she does.
Eric?
No, not at the moment.
You're not going to meet a lot in prison, Eric.
No, I probably won't. It's hard. Lyle's more able to have that type of relationship.
Eric, you know that the prosecutor brought up the fact that you might have been a homosexual and that this might have caused some of the fury on your father's part.
Yes, he did.
I didn't hear about girlfriends.
They were there.
I guess what I just have to say to you is, are you gay?
No.
I have a question for you, Barbara. Why is that question even relevant, if he's gay or not? What does it have to do with his situation? What does it have to do with the sentencing? What does it have to do with the crime that took place? Are you insinuating that if he was gay, that somehow would work against him in this situation? Because somehow his sexuality, whether it's gay or straight, is going to determine if he enjoyed the abuse that he was going through with his father? Because that's what the insinuation is. That's the only reason why that prosecutor brought up sexuality in the first place. It was to downplay the actual abuse and to insinuate that somehow, somewhere deep down in Eric's mind, he was enjoying the sexual encounters with his father. And so therefore, if you're enjoying the sexual encounters, then why would you shoot and kill him if you were enjoying this? It was their way of trying to pervert Eric as this person who honestly enjoyed the abuse, which is so sick to me and disgusting. And the fact that Barbara Walters is mimicking that perspective by even asking that question to him is beyond disgusting to me. And in my opinion, she is not the goals. She is not the greatest of all time. Anybody who would go for a lowball question like that does not get my respect. I don't think that type of tone would ever exist in today's world with Me Too going on. And it's just sad that, unfortunately, because of the times back then, you could get away with questions like this. If Lyle and Eric were females or were sisters, I don't think these questions would even be in the realm of reality.
And by the way, even back then, if they had been the Menendez sisters instead of the Menendez brothers, I don't think they ever would have been convicted, and they certainly wouldn't be in prison.
And what's even sadder is that there was a jury member who actually spoke about what it was like in the jury room during the first trial that ended up being a mistrial. And she discusses the differences between how the male jurors judged this case versus the females.
The jury was on, just if you can kind of understand, was it split along male and female? How did this break down? Because I've heard a lot of stories.
It was a battle of the sexes. It was on our jury, it was split half and half, 6 women and 6 men. All of the women wanted to vote for manslaughter, and all of the men wanted to vote for murder. On the Lyle Menendez jury, it was slightly different, but roughly half and half, roughly men against women.
You know, I think many would agree in hindsight that one of the biggest travesties of this entire situation is that when the mistrial happened the first time and the second trial took place, there was complete bias by the justice system. Things that the defense was able to do at the first trial, they were limited at the second trial, which in my opinion makes absolutely no sense. For instance, there were no cameras allowed in the second trial. Now, why the lack of transparency? To me, that's a red flag. That tells me that you may not want things to be seen because you don't want public opinion or public eyes to be on this case, causing more pressure. But here's the thing, we need transparency, especially within the justice system. This behind the scenes stuff does not work. But the major problem is that the judge had a lot of pressure from, I guess, the powers that be not to have an OJ Part 2.
You, at the outset of your question to him, you pointed out that our understanding of battered person syndrome or intimate partner battering is very different today than it was then. Keep in mind that even though this was 20 years ago, 6 of the jurors accepted the imperfect self-defense contention, that there had been abuse and that it made a difference in their culpability level. And this was 20 years ago. The reason that happened is because that jury heard not only the state's evidence, but they heard the defense evidence as well. They heard the full presentation of 31 source witnesses. That was the name given, and what the doctor's referring to are the witnesses that testified about the abuse. That jury was unable to convict of murder, and 6 of them wanted to convict of manslaughter. Compare that to the second jury. Every one of those 31 source witnesses was objected to by the prosecution. The trial court excluded many of them terribly significant witnesses.
In my opinion, they were handicapped by this corrupt judge. And that is exactly why the brothers ended up getting a life sentence instead of manslaughter. That is corruption 101.
The jury found, more than half, that they were not guilty of the murder, but they should go for the manslaughter. Now, that was a hung jury.
Right.
What happened between trial number 1 and trial number 2?
They took out that
OJ
evidence.
was acquitted. Yeah, and guess what happened? The DA And the judge decided we're going to make course correction. We're not going to be made fun of anymore. We're not going to get there. And the DA, David Kahn, who tried the second trial, he didn't try the first, he actually argued in the closing argument to the jury it was an abuse excuse. They had fabricated it, the whole thing, knowing that all of this evidence, besides these two, was available.
It just makes you wonder, and rightfully so, how different things would have been if all of the witnesses were allowed to actually speak and testify. But there's one specific witness who never came forward, unfortunately, and I believe that if this person had come forward back when the trial was happening in the early 90s, things would have been completely different. In fact, I don't believe that the Menendez brothers would have even gotten prison time had this person stepped forward. And who is this person with the smoking gun? A man by the name of Roy Rosello. Now, Roy was a former member of the pop Puerto Rican band Menudo. Menudo was a huge band back in the 1980s. They were pretty much like the original NSYNC or Backstreet Boys, but even bigger, if you can imagine that. And at the time, in Latin America, they were exploding and about to explode here in the United States. And in a weird twist of fate, the path of Roy completely crashed into the Menendez brothers and their sick father.
But could new information from the boy band Menudo free the Menendez brothers after 3 decades? Menudo started the boy band craze. At the peak of their fame, their popularity was on the scale of the Beatles. Ricky Martin was its most famous member. In a new 3-part documentary now streaming on Peacock, former Menudo singer Roy Rosello claims he was drugged and raped by Jose Menendez in the mid-80s.
Yo tenía 13 años. Edgardo, él dijo, ahora llegó el momento de estar en la casa de Menéndez. Cuando yo entro en la limusina, yo veo Menéndez mirándome con los ojos queriendo comerme.
So Roy goes on to explain that the same night that they were able to sign the contract, his disgusting manager, Edgardo Diaz, took him to Jose Menendez's home. And only Roy. Because Roy was a person that he himself was molesting and raping on a nightly basis. And he decided to offer up Roy to Jose. See, that same night, Jose decided to give Roy some wine. And he gave him a lot of wine that night. And I believe he drugged him because shortly after drinking the wine, Roy explains how he couldn't see anything, everything was blurry. But he ended up waking up the next day in a hotel room having no idea how he got there. And he was in excruciating pain. And he knew that something really bad had happened with Edgardo and with Jose Menendez. And in fact, Edgardo confirmed that yes, Jose Menendez did sexually assault you and it's okay because we got a contract. Now, the reason why this story is so relevant right now is because the whole push that the prosecution had against the Menendez brothers back when they were going through their second trial is that they were lying. Jose Menendez, there was no proof that he was a sexual predator or a sexual abuser. They limited all of the character witnesses against Jose. But see, Roy wouldn't have been a character witness. Roy would have been an actual witness to sexual assault directly from Jose Menendez, proving that if he sexually assaulted him, that it is very likely that he was sexually assaulting his own sons. That is a revelation. That is a story that would have completely shattered the prosecution. But unfortunately, at the time, Roy was not ready to come forward. He was living in Brazil, and he was still trying to understand what happened to himself after years and years of abuse as well. And it wasn't until a couple of years ago that he decided to speak up and that he needed to say something on behalf of the Menendez brothers because he knows himself that if he had spoken up when it really mattered, it would have made a big difference. Question is, can this make a difference now in 2023? That is definitely up in the air when it comes to appealing because the brothers have lost their appeal, so they can't really appeal again. But there is a chance. There's a chance that this trial can be reopened on the basis that not all of the relevant evidence was presented correctly at the time of the trial. And I don't know about you, but a person coming forward saying, yes, Jose raped me as well, is definitely relevant to this case. If you haven't seen the documentary Menendez plus Menudo on Peacock, I strongly advise you to watch that documentary because it goes in detail on Roy's story and how it intersects with the Menendez brothers and their story and their father. It's an amazing docuseries. Get some tissues because you're going to be crying. And it's groundbreaking. It's completely groundbreaking. And I hope and pray that this is just the beginning for a new chapter in Lyle and Eric's lives because they deserve a second chance. 1000% they do. They were railroaded the first time due to a very corrupt judge who was more invested on what he looked like to the public than providing justice for these boys. Look, only time will tell as to what's going to happen. We can only hope and pray that justice finally is going to be served after all of these years. The Roy story coming out, that it starts to build pressure and create pressure for a new trial to be set. I definitely will keep you guys updated if any new information does come from this, because I am watching like a hawk, am completely empathetic and sympathetic to the Menendez brothers. In my opinion, they should not be in prison. No way, no how. And let's hope this time around, if it does go back to trial, the media gets it right this time. I will say Ryan Murphy is actually working with Netflix to create a new docudrama regarding the Menendez brothers called Monsters, plural. Now, the first season was about Jeffrey Dahmer. Now, I don't know if Monsters is speaking of the brothers or of the mom and dad. I hope it's the mom and dad, because they are the true monsters in this story. I don't know much about this new series that's going to be coming out. It's coming out actually next year, but I do know that Ryan Murphy is really good at trying to gather as much information as possible and giving you a full perspective of a story. So I'm going to give him some slack, and I'm going to assume that he's going to provide a thorough story that really tells the other side that we have not yet seen from any of these TV movies. Crossing my fingers. If you enjoy this content and you want to see more content like this, please let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell so you know when I post a new video. I am also available on Instagram and on TikTok under CurlyBoyChuck, and I'm now also available on Rumble under CurlyBoyChuck. Till next time, peace.